So, welcome. I'm delighted that you're here today. I want to officially open our STIP hearing today, the Southern California version, and I'm Commissioner Inman and delighted to be here today with my fellow commissioners, Lucy Dunn, who needs no introduction in this hood for sure, and Commissioner Kehoe. So we're all delighted to be here. Susan, would you like to do some introduction?
All right. I have a few opening remarks, but before I start, just make sure that you all know the evacuation route. There's red signs there for the exit routes, and the overflow room, there's restrooms if you go out there to the right. And I do have the Wi-Fi code, if you would like that. It's TCA 250. All right. So want to thank you for attending this meeting today. This is the first of two hearings required prior to adopting the 2018 State Transportation Improvement Program, otherwise known as the STIP. The STIP is a 5-year program of capital improvements adopted by the Commission biannually in even-numbered years. It is comprised of the Regional Transportation Improvement Programs prepared by the regional agencies and the Interregional Transportation Improvement Program prepared by Caltrans. State law requires that the Commission hold at least 2 hearings, one in the north and the other in the south, before adopting each new STIP. The purpose of the hearings, as specified in the Government Code, is to reconcile any objections by any county or regional agency to the Caltrans program, or Caltrans's objectives to any objections to any regional program. The hearings also provide an opportunity for each regional agency and Caltrans to explain its proposals and the reason that the Commission should include the proposal in the STIP. Each commissioner has a copy of the hearing briefing book prepared by staff. This is not a staff recommendation of any kind. It is simply staff's compilation of the RTIPs and the ITIP presented in a single format. The commissioners that are not present today have received a copy of this staff book. A compilation of this magnitude prepared in a relatively short time period may include some errors or misinterpretations. Therefore, the compiled information remains subject to updating and correction before we prepare the STIP staff recommendations. We invite anyone concerned to bring us changes and corrections as soon as possible. So Teresa Favila will now provide an overview on the development of the 2018 STIP.
Thank you, Susan. The RTIPs and the ITIPs were received by the deadline of December 15th. The STIP is constrained by the levels of funding identified in the fund estimate adopted by the Commission at the August Commission meeting. Each STIP covers 5-year periods and adds 2 new years of programming capacity. In addition, each STIP covers portions of consecutive 4-year county share periods. The fund estimate identified 3 targets for each region and Caltrans. These are a minimum, total target, and a maximum. The first 2 years of the 2018 STIP completes a 4-year share period ending in 1920. A new 4-year share period begins in the 3rd year of the STIP in the year 2021. The new programming capacity for the 4-year share period ending in the STIP is reflected in the county summaries as the minimum share target. This means that programming proposed within the level of the county's minimum share must be included in the new STIP. The fund estimate identified $2.259 billion in new capacity for the STIP programming, with most of the capacity in the last 3 years of the STIP. We received $2.246 billion in RTIP and ITIP proposals. The first page of the hearing briefing book is the summary that compares the RTIP and the ITIP proposals against the program capacity levels identified in the fund estimate. The programming challenge for the 2018 STIP is that proposals for the first 2 years of the STIP period exceeds the capacity available by approximately $500 million. This means that many projects proposed for the first 2 years will need to be moved to the last 3 years of the STIP. In total, there were 21 counties in Caltrans that proposed above their total target level. Similarly, there were 33 counties that proposed below their total target level. The remaining counties have advances and therefore have no targets in this cycle. Although total proposals are below the available capacity, staff may not be able to program every project, as some proposals may not be consistent with STIP guidelines. After the STIP hearings, staff will begin preparing a comprehensive recommendations for the adoption of the 2018 STIP. The STIP adoption is scheduled for the March Commission meeting. Staff will publish its recommendations no later than February 28th, 20 days in advance of the STIP adoption. Staff recommendations will be based on the proposals in the RTIPs and the ITIP, the capacity identified by the fund estimate, the policies in the STIP guidelines, and any further information that we may receive during and following these hearings. We will continue working with Caltrans and the regions to address any questions or unresolved issues as we develop our staff recommendations and to make sure we understand regional and interregional priorities, and that no one is surprised by what the recommendation will be. After this introduction, we will move into the interregional and regional presentations. Caltrans will make a presentation of its ITIP, and each regional agency will have the opportunity to make a presentation regarding its RTIP and to comment on the ITIP. Before Caltrans and each of the regions testify, staff will give a brief overview of the issues specific to that proposal. Members of the public wishing to comment should fill out a speaker's card and can comment following the Caltrans or regional presentation or at the end of the hearing. This concludes my remarks, and if there are any questions, we can begin the presentations. I will first, okay, if you want to start, sorry.
I guess we don't have any questions. Let's go.
Okay. The first presenter is Caltrans, the Interregional Transportation Improvement Program. This is located on pages 81 through 83 of your briefing book. Caltrans is proposing $597 million of new programming. They are proposing above their total target by $69 million. In addition, they have requested almost $79 million more than their minimum target for the first 2 years of the STIP. Their proposal includes to cover cost increases for projects that are carried forward from the 2016 STIP. They are also proposing to restore project components of projects that were deleted in the 2016 STIP. They're proposing to add 7 new projects. They're mostly rail projects, and delete 1 rail project. And they are also proposing 5 projects utilizing APDE shares. I would like to note 1 rail project Caltrans is proposing to program, the Capitalized Maintenance Project. This project is missing an adequate PSR, or the Commission's Uniform Transit Application, which is the equivalent of a PSR. They are also missing the actual scope. The actual scope has not really been defined on this project. We cannot program a project without a defined scope, as it is not consistent with STIP guidelines. Bruce DeTerra is here to talk about the ITIP.
Thank you, Teresa, for the introduction, and I will be addressing the comments. Commissioners, thank you very much. I'll make my comments fairly brief going forward here. So as Teresa mentioned earlier, the projects that we're proposing under the Interregional Transportation Improvement Program, or ITIP, are projects to improve the state highway system, to improve the intercity passenger rail system, and projects specifically that are helping to improve interregional movement of goods, vehicles, and people, not necessarily in that order. So the plan is required by SB 486 that we produce this plan, bring this forward. The Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan, which is the guidance and the basis for the selection of the projects in the ITIP. This information was presented at the ITIP hearing in October of 2017, and we have not changed the projects that we're bringing forward other than making minor financial adjustments in consultations with your staff. So the ITSP, the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan, identified our priority corridors, and this set of projects is consistent with that plan. As Teresa mentioned, this proposal is funding the cost increases for both highway and rail projects as the first priority. Those are existing projects that were carried forward from the 2014 and 2016 ITIPs. At the time of the 2016 ITIPs, as you'll painfully remember, we were forced as the whole group for your action to delete $754 million in projects and delay another $755 million in projects. So that we didn't cause further damage to the ITIP, at that time we didn't account for cost increases. So we have 2 cycles of the STIP process that are accounting for cost increases with the 2018 ITIP, and that's accounted for in the cost funding increases, which I'll show you shortly. We also then reinstated projects that were still a priority for the state for projects or project components that were deleted due to the reductions in the 2016 STIP cycle. And then lastly, we've added new projects on the priority corridors, on the priority passenger rail system projects to bring new projects forward and to bring new components forward as well for project corridors that were already underway. As I mentioned earlier, we made a number of minor technical changes to PPRs, project programming request forms, and we may need to make further ones as we go forward prior to the official formal submittal of the staff recommendation by your staff. We have a summary table in the new ITIP that identifies all of the changes that were made. We also have a minor reduction in the total amount that we're requesting. We were able to refine things a little bit so that we're reducing that extra ask that we were making through this process. But we are still asking for more than what our target shares are. So for the highway projects with cost increases, this is the new total. As you can see for the ITIP, this is a small set of projects that we've carried forward from 2016 that we have increased. There are no changes to the project list from the ITIP hearing in October. This is the same list. I believe we still have concurrence with all of our regional partners. At the time of the hearing, we didn't have any objections to any of our projects or project proposals. We received quite a large number of comment letters in support of a specific corridor, the Highway 46 corridor in San Luis Obispo and Kern counties. There were a couple dozen comment letters that were very consistent with each other supporting the project, and we had a few comment letters requesting additional projects and additional funding. And I'll get into that at the very end. In new intercity passenger rail projects, Teresa mentioned that this was we had quite a few of these. These are the most numerous of the projects. The one that Teresa brought up for the capitalized maintenance projects, we are working with our division of rail to refine what would be the PSR for that and to have a better defined scope so that by the time that the staff recommendation is available, we'll have documentation such that your staff will have adequate grounds to recommend approval. And if not, we would possibly withdraw the project rather than force you to vote against that. Restored projects or project components from the deletions was the next priority, or not the next priority, but it is a piece of this. So you can see that we're bringing back quite a few projects. These were strongly supported by our regional partners, and there were no changes to this list since the October hearing. These are the new highway projects. We had some that we removed, deleted, and some of them swapped money among different project components to better facilitate their delivery, and we actually brought in some new projects that we didn't have capacity for in the past. So in total, approximately $600 million in total projects through this. We also have the APDE, which enables us to advance projects using future ITIP shares, no more than 25% of the next 2 years of the potential STIP process. We haven't used the full capacity, and we are electing not to use that full capacity of the full 25% so that we retain abilities to make different decisions in the future should we need to have different priorities. So with all those projects you saw listed, when you distribute them around the state on a map, the rail projects are not shown on this map. These are just the highway projects. You can see that the $600 million does not create a dense population map. But over time, we hope to complete these corridors and bring you some happy news at the next ITIP cycle. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions or wait until the very end.
we have any questions? Bruce, I have one. It looks like of your cost increases are 20% of the ask, if I did my rough kind of math. And what do we learn from that? Because if we're starting out where we're over-programmed, and if everybody went over, then we'd really be far over. So any lessons learned, or what can we do so that that number is not 20% of your ask?
So had we done an update in the previous STIP cycle, we would have had a substantially less increase. I think when we had the original set of estimates for the projects that were in motion, these are long-standing projects that we've been developing in phases and segments through multiple STIP cycles, so that the initial sets of estimates were substantially lower than where we are now, where our costs have started to increase. So we're accounting for the newer costs and then also a 4-year period of cost increases. So for lessons learned, doing these cost increases incrementally at every change in the phase and each STIP cycle would help us avoid a large increase at the very end. And I imagine that during some of the development of this process, that it was a long enough period that standards actually changed during those time periods, requiring that we do more on each project than what we initially started off with. But again, doing the cost estimates and updates as we go through each cycle rather than waiting as we did. It was a risk to take, but we didn't want to delete projects.
So of the other 80% of the projects that are in there, how fresh are those estimates?
Those are all updated.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Kehoe?
Thank you. Appreciate the assist. I want to back up just a second, and
Sure.
This might not even be germane to your presentation, so point me in the right direction if it isn't. I notice again on our map that the San Diego east-west corridor to the Arizona border is not identified as a transportation corridor. On other programs, I also see that it's kind of a blank spot. Why is that? Is that supposed to come from the locals up to the state, or from the state down to the locals?
So for this program, and I will have to check, and I will do so during some of the next speakers.
Okay.
To be part of this program, the route would have to be identified in the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan as a priority corridor. It hadn't been in the past, but that's a subset of the total interregional road system. There are 93 routes in the interregional road system that were designated by the legislature, and I will check to see if Interstate 11 was one of those interregional routes. It may be, and if it was, through the development of the plan, it wasn't prioritized as a high priority interregional corridor for capital improvements. So if there is a determination that should be added through the next update of the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan, we would seek input from all of our regional partners as to what future priorities should be, and that would be taken into consideration in the plan. And that update of that planning process would happen in conjunction with the update to the California Transportation Plan, which is just initiated. I don't know its completion date offhand. But
Thanks,
that process will be coming up, and so we will check in with you as that starts as to, okay.
Commissioner Dunn?
Thanks, Bruce.
Sure.
You know, this map is a little bit hard to read, both on our screen, and we can't read that one. So maybe you could get us a copy of this one?
I will do so.
That'd be great.
Yes.
There's some detail in
I'll get you
there.
a bigger 11 by 17 copy so
Yeah.
you can really see it.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, no problem. Okay, thank you very much, and I will leave the mic on for subsequent speakers. And I'll leave the switcher.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay.
Teresa?
Commissioners, I have the first county, and it's San Diego County. You will find San Diego County's listing on page 53 of your hearing book. Commissioners, San Diego is proposing to program to their total target. However, they're proposing most of their programming in the first 2 years of the STIP, going over the minimum by $126 million. They are proposing to advance their I-5 HOV extension Phase 1 project to 1819 and 1920. So they're splitting the funding for the project, which is counter to the guidelines. But they, like other other counties with large projects, are doing so to try to assist us in the programming, because if you program a very large project in 1 year, it uses up that capacity there, you know. So, but since it is counter to the guidelines, we've discussed with them the possibility of programming it in segments, but they're doing this as a CMGC project, and so they're going to have to identify specific portions of the scope that maybe they could, handle as sort of a segment project, so we can program it that way, if possible, to try to do it in portions for the projects, so we don't have to program the entire amount in 1 year. This project is also seeking SB1 funds, so the scope and funding will need to be consistent with their SB1 submittals. They're also proposing three new projects using APD shares to start pre-development phases. San Diego.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kim Kawada. I'm the Acting Executive Director for SANDAG, and thank you for having me here, Vice Chair Inman and Commissioners. We really wanted to let you know we appreciate the CTC's efforts and leaderships to restore STIP funding and are grateful for the passage of SB1. The STIP funds really are a building block for how we see implementing our mobility projects and our environmental projects for the region. It helps us implement our regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy, relieve traffic congestion, encourage job growth, and encourage overall mobility in the region. Our STIP, as your staff mentioned, sort of focuses on two goals. One really is to complete what we call the North Coast Corridor program. The STIP portion really is focusing on the highway portion of that, the extension of the express lanes, which already are in existence sort of from the 805-5 split up northward. And really the vision is to actually build those lanes northward and as fast and as quickly as we can, depending on funding availability. The other portion is, as your staff mentioned, we do have 3 APDE projects that we'd like to get started, and that really would be sort of getting our next phase of projects ready. Turning to the North Coast Corridor program, which really is the premier, one of our premier projects in the region, it's a vital economic lifeline. It really connects not just people. We have about 60% of our population that lives in that coastal corridor. So 60% of the 3 million plus people actually live along that corridor. And it's a vital economic lifeline carrying goods all the way from the border up northward to the Port of LA Long Beach. I mean, it's a really vital connection both on the highway and then the accompanying rail side, the Low-Sand Corridor. It's been designated a corridor of regional and national significance. And really, the STIP allocation will help us see the vision forward that Commissioner Kehoe, when she was in the Senate, helped form. Back then, we had a Senate bill that was passed that really looked at marrying and looking at how we could improve not just the highways, but the rail and the environment and local community connections. The Coastal Commission approved a public works plan for the entire corridor several years ago, and so this is one of the ways we're able to implement that public works plan and kind of the vision for the region. This really is a unique collaboration between SANDAG, Caltrans, the CTC, and our local jurisdictions, and folks like the Low-Sand Rail Corridor Agency. There's a strong partnership. We've already invested about little more than $200 million of funding to get all the environmental mitigation and advanced mitigation. So really, the region has invested money for about 40 years of advanced mitigation to make sure these projects are shovel ready. So that's what's going on right now. The Caltrans CMGC contractor is already underway with building the first segments of these. Construction's underway on the rail portion and the environmental lagoon restoration in San Elijo. We just broke ground on that a month or so ago, or a couple months ago. And so what the STIP will do is allow us to build on that investment. We're asking for $162 million, as the staff mentioned, broken up over the first 2 years. We have stuck to our targets overall, but are asking for the funds in the early years. We will be asking and putting an application in partnership with Caltrans for SB1 dollars, specifically the Solutions for Congested Corridors funding that will be coming up in the next several months. But we really see it's a partnership between local dollars, regional dollars, and state dollars through investments with the STIP and SB1. The next, we really are shovel-ready. We have all the permits and the right-of-way. The next HOV segment will be ready to go to construction by early this summer. And then the final segment, we believe could be ready to go as early as next year. So we really are looking forward to this. The one good thing with the CMGC, while there may be some challenges, the benefits are we're working with the contractors in advance. And depending on the funding, can better define kind of how far we can go with available funding and when the timing of funds are going to be able to come in, realizing there's pressures in the early years of the STIP and timing with regard to the SB1 allocations coming forward. You will see from us also a variety of other applications because the other multimodal aspects of the North Coast Corridor, the rail and the active transportation, really do see their fits for either our local program, LPP formula funds from SB1, or the Transit and Intercity Rail Corridor Program, or the Trade Corridor Enhancement Program. So we're trying to package these projects that are really ultimately part of the larger vision into bite-sized chunks that could be funded. So really the two requests today would be the I-5 North Coast Corridor, the $162 million, and then the three projects for APTD are segment and interchange major connection at I-15 and State Route 78 that will really leverage the investments the region and the state has made to the I-15 managed lanes corridor connecting that to an east-west corridor known as the State Route 78. We have another direct connector, a missing connector in our urban area of the region in the East County that we have spent some funds doing the planning for is really, once we get the design, can be shovel-ready in the next couple of years, and then an aux lanes project in kind of the heart of the area, which serves one of our largest employment centers. So just in closing, we hope you feel that we're ready to be sort of a project delivery machine, and it really is pending funding. And we're working really closely with your staff and our Caltrans team to try to figure out exactly what the scope is depending on how the monies come together with the STIP and the timing and future SB1 funding. So I want to thank you again for your leadership and thank you for having the hearing here in Irvine.
Questions? Commissioner Kehoe?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Kim, thanks for the excellent presentation. I totally agree that moving on these projects as fast as possible is important. Right. And we've been up to the North County sites. It's there's a lot of construction being done there on the lagoons, on the rail, bridges, all at the same time. So I understand the purpose of the front loading to get these things done, but also there seems to be some. I'd like a comment from staff, if possible, about whether this is working programmatically, and if not, how can we let it work programmatically?
Do you want? Okay. So as indicated earlier, they are above their minimum by over 100,000 and 100 million. I'm sorry. Yes, and capacity for that year, for the first 2 years, were oversubscribed by 500 million.
Uh-huh.
So to the extent that we could work with San Diego and be able to segment the projects and stay within their minimum in those first 2 years, then we can work with them to program the rest in the later years. If there's a possibility to do maybe an AB 3090 with these projects, and that way you can start earlier, that is also an option. But that is one of the issues.
And I think from a larger perspective, and what we have historically told any individual county or Caltrans with the interregional program is they have no way of knowing what is going to happen in all the other areas in the state, and with project delays that might normally occur. This is a little bit different instance because we had a lot of projects delayed and deleted from the last dip, so we should have things ready to go. But in general, our advice is they should ask for the funding when the project is ready to go. That way, if we have to make delays, we're doing it in a knowledgeable way. Otherwise, they may tell us, well, they're going to be ready for construction in 3 years just because that's where they think we're going to put the funding, and we may have had money earlier, or we may end up delaying something that they had delayed themselves. So I think strategically, this is what Regions and Caltrans should be telling us to give us the best information then to make a decision to really understand how far we're having to delay something.
May I respond a little bit?
Of course.
Sorry.
Thank you.
you can hear I'm getting messages, and not all of which I fully understand, but the CTC has to take a statewide view, and that's perfectly understandable. We also are under the gun to deliver projects as quickly as possible because of the importance of SB1 and public support for the project. This is, as Kim said, shovel-ready. In fact, a lot of the work is already underway. So whatever can be done, and whether they can segment a little bit more, or we can move years around a little bit, I would just ask for CTC staff to do their utmost, as you always do, to get the projects done.
Yeah, if I may, and this is, reiterating what Teresa and Mitch were saying, that we've talked to staff, with the agency, and they understand, and they know the rules that prevent us from splitting project, unless it's a situation where we are programming separate segments, with their own, what do I want to say, independent utility. Thank you. And the way we're starting to do, there's other projects in the STIP now that were delivered with CMGC, and since these guys are already underway with the CMGC, it would be beneficial to have them submit the proposal in separate components or separate segments that can be programmed that way, and that would really help, with the lowering the ask in each year.
Hopefully, we can work on that and get these things moving the way you want them to.
Yeah, we're committed to working with CTC staff and our local district staff on trying to find a way. But these projects are shovel-ready, and they're really waiting for just funding to be available.
Maybe you could give me a little update on Monday. I'll come down in person instead of doing it by phone.
Okay, we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks to staff also.
Commissioner Dunn.
Kim. Oh, Kim, don't leave yet.
My apologies.
I'm going to have the hardest question of all.
Okay.
No, thank you very much for your presentation. Very, very thoughtful and interesting issues that we'll have to contend with. But my ears perk up when you say you're applying for SB1 funding.
Right.
And poor San Diego, you're the hotbed of SB1 opposition.
Yes.
How are you managing the public's knowledge of the need for SB1 funding to help deliver these projects for their mobility purposes?
Well, I think we've worked with the locals and in concert with the League of Cities.
Yeah.
In terms of, so while there is opposition, I guess, surrounding it or the campaign kind of starting in our area, in terms of the local jurisdictions themselves, they are using the funds, or they've submitted their,
Right.
I know we have a couple of the cities that still needed to, but like we're getting ready and gearing up. And in terms of the projects themselves that we're proposing to rely, we are really publicizing these projects.
Great.
I mean, this is, North Coast Corridor truly is a premier project. I mean, we have two major projects going on in our region. Construction of our Mid-Coast Trolley Line, which is an 11-mile extension, which is funded by our sales tax measure, and about $1 billion worth of federal dollars that we were able to bring to the region. And really, North Coast Corridor is really that sort of on the other side, a major thing. And so I think the construction underway, even though while there's no technically SB1 funds for the San Alejo Lagoon, rail, or the coastal improvements, they really are part of this larger program. Mm-hmm. And the fact that people are seeing construction underway, I think, we still can still be counted towards SB1, because that is part of the overall project. While we need to, I understand the need, we need to actually segment and program and fund these things sort of in buildable things so we can go through the process. That's the kind of things that folks are seeing. They're seeing projects build. And so when the, repeal campaign comes up, we can say, hey, if this is, if you vote against this, these are the kinds of things that, you're going to stop construction here. You're not going to be able, you're going to stop improvements on Interstate 5 that the region has long planned.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks. And your board is supportive of that as well. Awesome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim, and thanks. I think this kind of presents a challenge for all of us, because we have looked at your corridor as really being a poster child of how to take an integrated approach. And so when we have those integrated approaches, we've got some big ticket items, and when we have limited funding, it is difficult. So I appreciate you all working together to figure it out, because I think it's in all of our best interests to get this done. And, clearly it's a major artery in our state. There's nobody can doubt that.
Yeah.
And, redundancy, resiliency, I mean, we've seen that, what happens, and Darren's going to talk to us a little bit about what happens when a major artery is lost for all of us. So I think whatever we can do, and I'm going to go back to my question of my friend Bruce again, I think it behooves all of us to try to minimize any cost increase, because any cost increase we have on any project just makes our balancing act tougher at the end. So, and then on the good news side, I want to call out Vince Mamano, who has joined us. Great to see you, Vince, and I'm sure he brought you some extra money, Kim.
Oh, I'll see you. Yes. He said deep pockets and short arms. Okay. Thank you.
Comments from staff or anything? We good? Okay. Move along.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next presenter is Riverside County. These are the RTIP pages are located on page 46 and 47 of your hearing book. Riverside County is proposing to program above their total target by $667,000. They are proposing to program above their minimum in the first 2 years of the STIP by almost $18 million. They are proposing to add 3 new projects in the first 2 years of the STIP. One of the new projects is the I-15 Express Lane Southern expansion. They are proposing to program environmental at $50 million using regular and APDE shares. Shirley?
Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, before you have this two-sided map that I'll be referring to. But first I'll start off with a little bit of fun facts. Riverside County is the 4th largest county at 7,300 square miles. We're also the 4th largest in population at over 2.3 million. The SCAG RTP indicates that Riverside County will have the most growth in the SCAG region. We will grow about 40% in 2040, where the SCAG region will have a 21% increase. So the bulk of the growth is going to occur in Riverside County. We are a self-help county. We passed 2 measures. We have a half-cent sales tax revenues through 2039. We also have adopted transportation uniform mitigation fee programs on the eastern and western side of the county. So we're doing what we can to help ourselves. We recently completed a strategic assessment in which we did some polling and had some town meetings. Basically looking at all the projects that we need. It was identified at $16 billion through 2039, and $10 billion is unfunded. So therefore we need to continue supporting SB1, and we will be. This afternoon we're having our annual commission workshop, and we are going to be requesting an opposed SB1 repeal, and we'll let you know how that goes. But yeah, the outcome will be later on this afternoon. But basically, lots of infrastructure, and we're doing multimodal, and we're doing transit, and our cities are doing TOD and high-quality transit areas. We're doing all we can, but we still need capacity enhancements. And I know that's something that the state, doesn't want to hear too much. But if you look at the map, you can see that we don't have enough infrastructure to support the growth that we're going to have to accommodate. So back to my map, if you can look at the Western County section. Teresa mentioned that we have the 15 express lanes. That project is programmed, or we're proposing to program P&ED for $50 million. The northern segment has just started construction, so we're really excited about that. So altogether on the I-15, we're proposing about 30 miles of express lanes, which will also enhance the 91 express lanes. We have 2 other interchange projects on I-15, a major goods movement corridor, Railroad Canyon Interchange, and I-15 French Valley. And just a note on I-15 French Valley, we needed to reduce our STIP last time, as you recall, and I-15 French Valley took the hit. So we're happily putting that money back on. And then we also have the 60 truck climbing lanes project that we're partnering with Caltrans. Caltrans also has $15 million to shop on this safety project. So we're hoping to get that started very soon. On the flip side, on the Eastern County side, I think you've heard of CV Link. That's a regional pedestrian bikeway and low-speed electric vehicle type of pathway. mostly along the Whitewater Channel River. And we're putting more money on that project and are excited that the segments are starting to come about and start construction of this lengthy project. And we're also including a new project, Avenue 66 grade separation. This is part of the Alameda Corridor East corridor, so that we're continuing to get our grade separations implemented and want to continue with that as well. And we hope that, again, SB1 funding is going to continue to get the grade separations that we have so many of implemented in a timely basis. That concludes my presentation. I don't think I only had 5 minutes. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Staff, any questions? You're good? Commissioner Dunn? I have just one question. I-15 South, the southerly segment at 50 million?
50 million for PNED.
So that's environmental work?
Yes. And
what are we doing there?
That's a really good, this is 14.5 miles of express lanes that we're going to be connecting to the 15 North section. The 15 North section, we had over 40 million in PNED. So we feel that estimate that we're starting construction on that northern section, the estimate is a really good, it's a shocking number, I understand, but that's how much we spent on the PNED for the northern segment.
Wow. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have the backup.
Yeah, thank you. Commissioners, the next county is Ventura County. Ventura County is found on, it's on page 78 of your book. And Ventura County is not proposing any new programming except for their PPM, but they're saving their shares for a future project, and they have 58 million, as of this dip. So they're doing the right thing. So, Ventura.
So I should probably just go back to my seat. I'm sure when Commissioner Kehoe was in the state legislature, it was what don't lose votes. So, in spite of that advice in council, let me just very briefly share with you a little bit about what is happening in Ventura County, and then I do know Commissioner Inman has a question for me. First of all, Commissioners, good morning. I'm Darren Kettle. I'm the Executive Director of the Ventura County Transportation Commission, and as has been noted, we are not requesting anything other than our PPM funds in the STIP for 2018. But I would like to share a little bit with you about what our plans are for the future. In fact, if you go back a couple of years, VCTC also, when this body was having to wrestle with some significant reductions, we also, at the time it was $750 million, we volunteered to use our Federal Surface Transportation Program grant funds, federal funds, to advance 2 major highway projects in Ventura County. It was really moving the preliminary engineering and environmental document phase that you were just going over with Ms. Medina on the I-15. Similarly, we're doing that in Ventura County with our federal funds in an effort to try to support, at that time, the crisis that you were dealing with. We have these 2 key projects are, first of all, one that's been in the news a bit lately. It's US 101 through Ventura County. We'll talk a little bit about the stretch between Ventura County and Santa Barbara County and Commissioner Inman's questions. But 101 is Main Street, Ventura County, and it is suffering from ever worsening congestion. The project that we're working on is widening the 101 from the Los Angeles County line generally in the city of Thousand Oaks for nearly 30 miles to downtown Ventura. Again, it's widening, adding a lane in each direction and likely auxiliary lanes. And even though that this corridor is our priority and we are using our federal funds, there will never, certainly not for a very long time, be enough funding to look at the construction of these improvements, which is on the low end estimated at about $750 million on the construction side. So a substantial chunk of money, and goes back to staff's comments about the fact that we're holding on to the funding that we do have available in our share for a future project. We are hoping to identify some early action projects that might be able to target where our most congested portions are, and so that will be a part of our preliminary engineering activity, is to identify those locations that we're able to make some relatively inexpensive improvements to relieve congestion on, again, Main Street, Ventura County. It would be at that point that we would come back to this body in future steps and say we've identified a couple of early action projects to try to move our funding, our target to that, our share to that. And then we will, as the SB1 has come up already a couple times today, we do hope to move forward in future cycles on the congested corridor, solutions for congested corridors, that we would pursue early action, or potentially even other corridor funds for the 101. The other major freeway project in Ventura County that we've moved forward with our federal funds is improvements to the 118 freeway, which is also known as the Ronald Reagan Freeway between Simi Valley and Moore Park. It's the only other corridor leaving Ventura County that goes into the San Fernando Valley and the Los Angeles County Basin. Again, it's a bit more localized. It's more of a commuter freeway versus the 101, which is, of course, very multidimensional. It is part of the regional, state, national highway system, as well as part of our, recognized as an important part of the regional, national, and state economy. Both of these two projects were identified in VCTC's Measure AA that was on the ballot in 2016. And while 58% of Ventura County voters supported the measure, it did not reach the constitutionally required two-thirds supermajority. The only way that these two projects, with a total estimated project cost for construction of over $1 billion, can ever be built in the foreseeable future is likely from the proceeds from a really big bake sale, or possibly a future attempt at another transportation sales tax measure. But I should say my commission has not gotten to the point where they're prepared to move in that direction. At that same election cycle in 2016, I now have 7 new commissioners on the commission, and several of those commissioners ran opposing our AA sales tax measure for transportation. Until then, it's hard to argue that there's a project of more importance to Ventura County and arguably the Central Coast, as our role as a partner on the state highway system, and that is the 101 corridor, and it will be our priority for the limited funds that we do have at our disposal. Thank you for the time to share with you a little bit about what our future is hoping to look for and what we're trying to do to help make things work today. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm happy to respond to questions.
You have any questions? We're going to digress just a minute here. I asked Darren how they were doing today. Obviously, it's been a tough winter season for our friends in Ventura, Santa Barbara counties. So can you share a little bit about the amazing work you did to get some of our communities back to be able to getting to work? And
certainly, I'll share a little bit about what we did, but hats off to Caltrans maintenance crews and the California Highway Patrol for doing amazing work to take what could have been a 3 or 4 week shutdown of the 101 freeway between Ventura and Santa Barbara, and doing it in a week. If you've seen pictures of the devastation, it's a miracle that it was taken care of in a week. However, in that time, you're probably very familiar with the nature of Santa Barbara County, a beautiful place, but the housing there, oftentimes people can't afford to live in Santa Barbara and they live in Ventura County. And so we have a number of commuters that leave Ventura County, go to Santa Barbara every day. So over the Martin Luther King weekend, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Saturday, I got a phone call from Margie Kern, my counterpart in Santa Barbara County, asking, we have somewhere on the order of 600 essential employees that either serve education, public health, law enforcement, regular health care, and we can't get them to Santa Barbara County. We operate a bus service, a commuter bus service between Ventura and Santa Barbara. It's a very successful bus route for commuters. Of course, those buses were not able to operate on the 101 when it was closed. So what we did in a matter of about 2 days is we assembled 10 of our buses and ran a convoy with CHP escort, leaving Ventura at 5:30 in the morning on the Tuesday following Martin Luther King, so again 2 days after the phone call. And for that full week, ran educators, administrators, county employees, healthcare employees, law enforcement, mental health, up that corridor with one trip up in the morning at 5:30 with CHP escort and one trip back at night around 6 or 6:30. And We were able to do it because we weren't operating our other service. I mean, it's the limitations of having only so much equipment. But we were able to do that, and then, of course, Amtrak Pacific Surfliner also added cars that helped relieve some of the issues. But certainly the level of partnership that came about through this situation, is, as I was mentioning in Commissioner Inman, we just sort of dropped everything and figured out a solution. Fortunately for us, we had 10 over-the-road coaches, sitting in the yard ready to go. And we have received very positive remarks and comments from our ability to step up and help out in that situation.
Thank you. Hey, Darren, thank you for standing. Thank you for still being there. Thank you for your leadership in Ventura and for all of Southern California. Ventura is still important to our economy, and your success is important to us too. And so also from a personal level, really appreciate your leadership on the whole self-help measure issues. Yeah. We'll do it again. Okay.
Put me back in, Coach.
You betcha. Thanks.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
And thanks for sharing. And I think we need to celebrate that kind of resiliency and success and figuring out solutions. And so I quickly quip back to Darren. Well, let's keep doing that every week. We'll get a CHP escort and run a bus platoon up there. And one thing I did ask Darren, though, if we had any folks that hadn't been participating in our transit, to see if we could convert them to our service. So I think it'd be great. So I don't know if there might be an opportunity, but clearly necessity was the mother of invention, and I think we need to try to build on that. So thank you, Darren, for your leadership.
Okay, our next county is Kern County. This is located page 19 in your hearing book. Kern County is proposing to program above their total target by $18 million. In the first 2 years of the STIP, they are proposing new programming above their minimum target of almost $49 million. They are proposing to increase funding to their Route 58 West Side Parkway connector. They are splitting this project to be delivered into 2 phases for funding purposes. They are also proposing to fund the Route 132 Expressway in Stanislaus as a repayment of an exchange made to the TCRP funds. Here is Aaron Hakimi.
Good morning, Commissioners, Vice Chairman Inman, Commissioner Dunn, Kehoe, Susan, Mitch, Teresa, and Juan. Thank you for having me today. I'm the Executive Director for Kern Council of Governments. I'm here today mostly to thank you and your staff for all the hard work that they've done and hopefully funding our highest priority projects. Kern COG continues to move forward to advance several projects that have been in the STIP for many cycles. Kern COG, as a reminder, is part of several projects that make up our Eastern California Programming Partnership. One on US 395 that was mentioned previously in the ITIP presentation in Olancha, and also projects on State Route 14 in Kern County. As I indicated during the ITIP hearing, we support the proposed programming for these projects in the Eastern Sierras. Again, we commend Caltrans for the investments proposed for improvements to the Kramer Junction project. That is huge for Kern County residents. And also the investment on Route 46 in San Luis Obispo County. That east-west mobility in Kern County is huge. We, in Kern County, truly appreciate the investments in San Bernardino and in San Luis Obispo County. Our residents are the ones that are going to be using those investments. We also support continued investments on Route 99 in Tulare, Madera, and Merced counties. We also appreciate Caltrans' assistance with the delivery of a project on Route 46 that is close to our hearts, and we look forward to the 2020 ITIP to complete that corridor. Our first priority project in the region is the West Side Parkway connector. We call it Centennial Corridor. It's part of Route 58, and you'll see details of it on this two-sided attachment that I provided for you. We worked with Teresa specifically to split that into 2 phases. As Teresa has mentioned, it's difficult in some cases because of capacity to deliver large projects. We have requested the maximum, as Teresa has mentioned. With Commission assistance, we've split that project into 2 phases, and I won't go over the details of those 2 phases. I'll just, in general, say we've split it into the main line and then connections to Route 99. I'd like to remind everyone about the Highway 58 corridor, which is our highest priority corridor, and compare it to another corridor that many of you may be familiar with, and that's Donner Pass. Interstate 80 Donner Pass carries 5,600 trucks per day. The Tehachapi Pass, which our project is an extension of Route 58, carries 7,500 trucks a day, 33% more than Donner Pass. Those facts came out at the meetings we had in the Eastern Sierras a few months ago. I was unaware of this, looked into it, and it's true. So those 2 passes are roughly 200 miles apart, and they are usually open all winter. I know Donner Pass closes, and occasionally 58 over the Tehachapi's closes. But the point I'm trying to bring out is 30. Yes, Commissioner.
What are the destinations for all that traffic?
The destination for the traffic's on the east-west traffic in 58?
Yeah, the east-west traffic.
Most of the destinations are the eastern United States. So there's.
So they're just going through.
Yes, Commissioner.
And does Las Vegas play a role in that, or is my geography off?
I'm sure it does play a part. I'd say about everything south of probably Merced, the way that they would get to Las Vegas would be come through Bakersfield and go over the Tehachapi Pass.
But it's just throughput to the rest of the country, is the way you look at it?
We've done detailed origin and destination studies at KernCog, and I'd be glad to share that with the commission. But the majority of the traffic, especially the truck traffic, is destined to the eastern United States. All the agricultural products that come out of the central San Joaquin Valley, Wonderful Corporation, Bolt House Farms, those are sold nationally. About 95% of the carrots in the country are grown in Kern County. The baby carrots are grown in Kern County. Those are all distributed to the entire country. And the way they leave Kern County is over the Tehachapi Pass.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'd also like to comment on the $3.5 million that Teresa mentioned. And I'd like to publicly thank Stanislaus, Riverside, San Diego, Fresno, and Alameda County for all contributing to that very important interregional project on Route 46. All came together in the matter of a few weeks, and also thank you, Susan and Mitch, for your help in making that happen. And I see Rosa's in the audience today. Thank you again, Rosa. I appreciate your time this morning, and subject to any of your questions, that concludes my presentation.
Have any questions? I have just one question. So are those intermodal runs, are those connecting to any of our rail corridors, or are those just long-haul truckers?
As I think several of you experienced when we rode the rails over the Tehachapi Pass, I should describe that as more as a corridor. It is both a rail corridor and a truck freight corridor. So as at least 2 of you, I remember, were on that trip, experienced, we have a single rail line which takes BNSF and UP over the Tehachapi Pass to the eastern United States, and we have State Route 58. Even though it's a state route, it connects to an Interstate 40. We think of it as the extension of Interstate 40. Interstate 40 ends in Barstow, and in order to continue further west, you have to take a state route. Does that answer your question?
Well, I will come meet with you because I'd love to learn more about your origin and destination and what kind of goods we're moving on the corridor. And, you know, I would guess some of those truckers are just trying to avoid the congested metro area and bypass.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There has been over the last 10 years a significant portion of truckers that choose to avoid the Los Angeles, Riverside, San Bernardino Basin, and we work closely with Tejon Ranch to analyze that. The other thing that has happened in the last 15 years, and you're very familiar with this, is dozens, I think we're probably getting up close to 100 of distribution centers for both the national distribution centers and regional distribution centers have relocated to Kern County because it is the geographic center of population of California. There's about half the population lives south of us, half lives north of us, and we're within a relatively easy one-day turnaround from the entire state of California in Kern County. So that has added significantly to the traffic on I-5 and State Route 58.
I think we're all collectively feeling a lot more of the impacts of e-commerce and omni-channel distribution, and I think that may be an example of what's going on to a certain extent up there as well too, because we are having different distribution patterns. Thank you.
Commissioners, next county is San Bernardino County. There, it's found in page 51 and 52 of your hearing book. San Bernardino is proposing at their total target level. However, they're proposing, like others, above their minimum in the first 2 years of the state by almost 18 million. They have added the I-10 corridor contract 1 express lanes, delivering it as a design-build project. They will seek SB1 funds for this project as well as 2 other projects, the Route 395 widening and the Redlands Passenger Rail project. They are proposing to program 1 project using APDE funds. San Bernardino.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and staff. Ray Wolf, representing the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority. Coming into the 2018 STIP, we are fortunate that we have 3 very important projects that we have been working on for years that are now ready for construction. The I-10 Express Lanes, a project designed to accommodate the growing freight and commuter demand along this key national goods movement corridor. Redlands Passenger Rail, a 9-mile extension of rail from the current eastern terminus of the Metrolink system in downtown San Bernardino east to the University of Redlands. And the widening of US 395, a highly congested corridor, goods movement corridor, also in our county, in our high desert area. Together, these projects are expected to total $814 million in construction contract awards. And yet we are only asking for $62 million of our STIP share funds toward that cost, representing less than 8% of that total cost. Again, all 3 of these projects are ready to go to construction in the first year after adoption of the STIP. Applying the traditional proportional shares approach, we are only guaranteed $41.7 million in programming capacity in the first 2 years of the 2018 STIP, about 2/3 of our unprogrammed balance, while others have been guaranteed full access to their current balance. We have requested $62 million in our proposal, which exceeds our guaranteed share in the first 2 years. This remains less than the excess deprogrammed in the 2016 STIP. We appreciate the concern expressed by you, the commissioners, and your fellow commissioners as you made the difficult decisions and we took a fairly significant hit in the programming of the 2016 STIP, as did many others. I stand here today in front of you asking that you make the difficult decision and necessary decision to rebalance to the extent possible to create equity as we program the 2018 STIP. As I mentioned earlier, we have 3 projects that are ready to go to construction in the first year after the STIP is adopted. These are important projects, and I ask that you help us to improve the future of the residents of San Bernardino County's quality of life, while also helping to improve the flow of goods throughout the region. congested areas in San Bernardino County account for not only economic issues within our county locally from a goods movement perspective, but also impact those of our neighboring counties and impact the ability of the ports to move goods. Additionally, congestion in our county contributes to the declining air quality in the entire region. Yet we have a plan to move the needle in the right direction. And with your assistance, we can do this. Thank you very much. I'll entertain any questions.
Commissioner Dunn?
No questions. Thank you, Ray. But I did want to share with my colleagues that I think that this one is something we really do need to pay attention to. San Bernardino stepped up and was a team player when we took everyone else needed funding and they took the biggest hit. And so it is very compelling to me to talk about equity in this one and rewarding good behavior, because God knows if SB1 fails, we may be in the same position that we would not like to be. So when we have it, I think we should really work hard to accommodate this kind of thing, and I would ask us to really look at this one in an important way. Thank you.
Commissioner Kehoe? You okay? Ray, any of these projects going to be in the other application stacks that come in?
All three of the projects will be in a variety of the SB1 applications, yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Any staff questions for me? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next one is Tulare County. This is located in page 76 of your hearing book. Tulare County is proposing to program more than their total target by $3 million. They are proposing to program above their minimum in the first 2 years of the STIP by almost $18 million. They are proposing to change from regular shares to APD shares to fund the environmental for their Tulare City widening project. This is not consistent with STIP guidelines, although it may be aligned with the ITEP proposal. Here from Tulare is Ted Smiley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the Commission, Executive Director Branson, and CTC staff. My name is Gabriel Gutierrez. I'm a Senior Regional Planner with the Tulare County Association of Governments. And I'd first like to take this opportunity by thanking the CTC, Caltrans headquarters, and Caltrans District 6 staff for their assistance in preparing our 2018 RTIP proposal. I'd also like to thank Caltrans once again for their proposed ITIP investments on State Route 99. What we are proposing to you today is essentially a joint proposal prepared in partnership with Caltrans District 6 and is based on the TCAG Board's continued direction and commitment to deliver projects using STIP funding on the state highway system. State Route 99 continues to be a top priority for TCAG and the other COGs in the valley. Our proposal would utilize almost all the funding for goods movement projects. The projects would also address safety issues along State Route 99 corridor, as well as helping us achieve the GHG reduction goals established by for our region. TCAG has enjoyed working with you all and looks forward to our continued partnership, and we'd encourage you to approve the STIP as proposed. Thank you.
Any questions? Can we talk a little bit about the one that isn't consistent, Teresa, or is it just one?
Yes, it is. What they are proposing for this is APDE shares.
Okay.
And it was, in the 2016, this was programmed as regular shares. They cannot move it from regular shares to APDE shares because in essence, their APDE is advancing their shares. It's only for new projects.
Okay, okay. Mm-hmm. Well, whatever you all can do to keep us within our rules, we appreciate that.
And we'll work with the CTC staff to remedy the situation.
Right.
Thank you.
Commissioners, the next county is Imperial County. Imperial County is found on page 17 of your book. Imperial County is proposing to program above their total target by approximately $3 million, and that's cost increases for an existing project. They're proposing to program above their minimum in the first 2 years of the STIP by $4 million. This is mainly to cover those increases on the Route 8 Imperial Avenue interchange project. Imperial County.
Thank you, Steph. Commissioner, Chair and Commission and staff, thanks for the opportunity. First, I'd like to say thanks for the investments that we have accomplished. Most notably, a while ago, you all helped us complete the Brawley bypass, which was critical to our region as that corridor handles about 3,000 trucks daily, and it's facilitating very well. And most recently, the shop improvements that we've done in partnership with Caltrans on I-8 to rehabilitate the concrete there. We were here with you a couple of years ago to, primarily to maintain this in the program, and as we were having financial challenges here in the state. We were also subsequently hopeful to accelerate this project as we talked with staff about the opportunity to accelerate earlier. However, we did, in coordinating with Caltrans staff, they did have some challenges, and that's what they're working through right now. They had some right-of-way acquisitions that they have to finalize, as well as some utility relocation. So we are, with this new estimate, we have the costs that we feel very confident that we'll get ready to deliver in 1920. And it is our region's highest priority in terms of our STIP share. This project is crucial to our central part of our county, most notably in the city of El Centro, which is our largest city. And so this will improve the circulation within between the north side of Imperial I-8 and the south side of I-8. The city of El Centro is committed to complete a new roadway south on Imperial Avenue to help us facilitate this, as it will help us traffic flow south of Interstate 8. They have committed at least $10 million for the first phase of that Imperial Avenue extension of the roadway, and we're working towards a schedule that would complete the roadway and the interchange at the same time. So we appreciate your support, and open to any questions you may have.
Moving questions? Thank you, Mark.
The next one is Mono County. This is located in page 35 and 36 of your hearing book. Mono County is proposing to program within their total target. They are proposing to fund the construction component of their Olancha-Cartago 4-lane expressway that was deleted in the 2016 STIP. They are also proposing to program a new project, the Long Valley Street Rehab Project. Gary.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners and staff. Jerry LaFrancois with the Mono County Local Transportation Commission. First of all, thank you for doing town halls, because I think for a rural, one of the 3 southern rurals, I think is really important because the dynamics of needs is diverse as the geography of the state. So we appreciate you coming out for that. Our tip's pretty straightforward. We're going to continue working on our MOU projects. The big one for us, it's only 10% of our cost, but without Kerncog and without Inyo County, these projects really wouldn't be possible for just one agency to try to construct. And that would actually finish the gap issue that we have on State Route 395. And I'll let Courtney talk about that more in a few minutes since it's in his county. And finally, one other thing, our tip does allow us to get some local projects in. That was very important for our commission. I've heard some discussion too about SB1 support, because we tend to be a conservative county, and we've heard a little bit about that. So we're going to be looking and seeing maybe what the MPOs do as far as education, because we want to get rolling on our SB1 projects as soon as possible, so we can show some return. Finally, thanks to District 9 and headquarters staff, lots of moving pieces, CTC staff. We really couldn't do these projects without the support of everybody. And I'm happy to answer any questions if the Commission has any.
Thank you for hosting us at the town hall, too. It was important, and I think we all just really so appreciate getting out and seeing what you all are doing, and I continue to be impressed by the creativity and the determination that you all show to find a way to get things done. So thank you.
Thank you. We lucked out on the weather. The next 2 weeks were pretty rainy and snowy, so thank you.
Commissioners, Inyo County is next. You can find it on page 18 of your hearing book. Inyo County is proposing to program above their total target by approximately 20 million. They are proposing to program above their minimum in the first 2 years by approximately 7 million. They are restoring the construction component for the Olancha Cartago. This is the big project over there. And approximately 6.5 million is to cover cost increases in the pre-construction components. Inyo County.
Good morning. Yeah, my name is Courtney Smith, and I work as staff for the Inyo County Local Transportation Commission. Our priorities in the development of the 2018 RTIP were to, 1, program RIP funds for MOU projects on the state highway, 2, program local projects that leverage federal funds, and 3, program the preliminary components for new local projects. The MOU project costs immediately push our RTIP far above our target share. The MOU projects, reprogram projects that were dropped without prejudice from the last STIP. I think it might be worthwhile to kind of revisit our strategy in the 2016 RTIP. Why did we use all of our STIP surplus? The only way we could meet the deletion targets at that time was to deprogram MOU projects on the state highway. This left us with more than 20 million on the table. With the status of the STIP at that point, our commission concurred with a Caltrans proposal to fund the majority of construction on the State Route 14 Freeman Gulch Segment 1 project in Kern County. The action eliminated the fund reserve that we had been saving up since the 2008 STIP for the construction component of Olancha Cartago. Olancha Cartago is the last 2-lane stretch between Ridgecrest and Mammoth. It's a safety and corridor improvement project there. So we, with the STIP back in positive territory, thanks to the aid of SB1, all of a sudden the ITIP and MOU shares were back into the pot, and we really weren't left with any option but to keep our part of the bargain. And we would like to thank our MOU partners in Kern Cog, Mono, and the state for for moving this forward. So yes, we will have a negative share balance for almost 2 cycles, and we are prepared to accept that. At the same time, we are exploring ways to reduce the burden. Our commission was successful in nominating US 395 Olancha Cartago as a critical rural freight corridor in the hopes of potentially leveraging future funds. So to realize our priorities 2 and 3 for the local projects only adds 1.62 million to the RTIP, and those funds will leverage about 9 million in FHWA funds and keep our local agencies vested in the STIP. Please approve our RTIP as submitted. Thanks, and any questions?
Any questions? No. Thank you, Courtney. Okay, we're moving along. Fresno.
Fresno County, page 13 in your hearing book. Fresno County is proposing to program within their total target. They are proposing to add two new projects on Route 99 They will be seeking SB1 funds for the Veterans Boulevard Interchange and Extension Project. They are also proposing to add a new project using APD funds. Jennifer?
Hi, good morning. I am Jennifer Solis, representing Fresno Council of Governments. Thank you for the opportunity to present our 2018 Regional Transportation Improvement Program projects. We are grateful for the passing of SB1, which provides us the opportunity to propose 3 new projects to our RTIP that are extremely significant to our region. Our first proposed project is our region's #1 priority project, Veterans Boulevard. The Veterans Boulevard project will improve traffic capacity and enhance traffic operations and mobility to accommodate traffic demands in the Central Valley along State Route 99 in Northwest Fresno. The construction of Veterans Boulevard will provide facilities for vehicular, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic, decreasing delays and reducing travel times by constructing a 6-lane arterial roadway and Class 1 multimodal trail facility, a freeway interchange at SR 99, grade separations over the Union Pacific Railroad high-speed rail line and Golden State Boulevard, as well as improvements to roadways surrounding the projects. This is a $151 million project, and we are working in collaboration with the High-Speed Rail, City of Fresno, Fresno County Transportation Authority, and Caltrans to deliver a cost-effective and efficient project. Fresno County Transportation Authority will be competing for local partnership program funding for fiscal year 1920 to align with this $14.6 million STIP proposal. However, this project can be shelf-ready in 1819 should funding become available earlier. Our second proposed project is in partnership with Caltrans and is also being proposed in the ITIP as a restored project. SR 41 Excelsior Expressway is a project that will construct a 4-lane divided expressway from an existing 2-lane expressway and also close a 6-mile unimproved gap. SR 41 is an interregional, high-emphasis focused route corridor and will improve the regional movement of people and goods. It will also relieve congestion and improve safety. We support Caltrans ITIP recommendations and appreciate the proposed investments on SR 41. Our third proposed project is the South Fresno Interchange Project. This is a series of 5 interchanges that will serve a developing commercial area and potentially the proposed high-speed rail heavy maintenance facility. These 5 interchanges were designed as half interchanges, allowing traffic to exit in one direction only. Caltrans no longer uses the half interchange concept and has plans to replace 5 half interchanges with 3 full interchanges. Benefits include increased traffic capacity and improved traffic operations. Caltrans, Fresno COG, and the Fresno County Transportation Authority are proposing to environmentally clear all 3 interchanges simultaneously, allowing a scale of economy. The plan will include 3 distinct construction phases, which will be funded by a combination of our local measure and RTIP funds. This project will be ready for construction in 23-24 and ready to compete for later rounds of various competitive programs. All of our proposed projects are regionally significant and are included on our self-help Measure C expenditure plan. In addition to our RTIP funding proposals, we have leveraged local measure funds for all of our proposed projects and have been able to demonstrate success in keeping our promises made to our region by delivering past projects timely and efficiently. These benefits of our proposed projects are consistent with our adopted RTP-SCS and will also be consistent with our proposed 2018 RTP-SCS. I would like to thank the Commission, Caltrans, and the rest of our partners for their collaboration in the RTIP process, and we look forward to continuing our partnerships and delivering great transportation projects. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing no questions? Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Commissioners, next county is Los Angeles County, and you can find Los Angeles County listing on pages 25 and 26. Los Angeles is proposing to program above their total target by $110 million. They are proposing construction in 2 fiscal years for their East San Fernando Valley. And as I mentioned before, that's counter to Commission guidelines. Their RTIP is missing support cost increases for their 2 I-5 projects. That's we're working with them to, account for that. They will be seeking SB1 funding for 3 other proposed projects, and they're also proposing to fund 3 new projects using APD shares. Well,
great. Good morning, Chair Dunn, or Chair Inman, members of the Commission, as well as Executive Director Branson and Commission staff. I'm Will Ritter with LA Metro, and on behalf of the Metro, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to share with you our 2018 RTIP submittal. The RTIP is clearly an integral element of the delivery of our large transformative program of projects that has been envisioned through the recent passage of Measure M. With the passage of SB1, we have realized both opportunities and constraints. As with many of our peer self-help counties, we have planned for state funding partnership on many of these programs, and with the passage of SB1, that landscape has somewhat evolved for many of us, recognizing a focus on discretionary programs over historic kind of formula funding programs. That being said, the STIP continues to be, a large focus for us. Following the passage of SB1, our board took on a very kind of focused conversation about these different opportunities and constraints, and in September adopted what we called the evaluative criteria framework that really looked at kind of the necessary parameters in which we would look to prioritize investments, not only for discretionary projects, but importantly also those formulaic funds like the STIP. I think that the outcome of that has been very positive to be able to help kind of bring forward those priorities that you will be seeing here over the coming months for purposes of the SB1 discretionary programs, but to also talk about how things like the STIP fit into this conversation. And that has also translated into how we have communicated with our partner agencies and stakeholders throughout Los Angeles County about the benefits of SB1, and realizing that where there are going to be discretionary opportunities for projects that we'll be applying for, also recognizing the value of the formulaic funds and where those investments are important, in particular some areas of our county that might not have the types of competitive projects that would otherwise realize funds through the discretionary programs in SB1. So with that, I'd just like to kind of talk a little bit about how we've come to the priorities for the 2018 RTIP. Clearly, as others have talked about, and I think has been a focal point for the Commission, has been the restoration of prior project deletions, being our top priority that our board has supported. We've also looked at how we are advancing state goals with respect to areas of not only safety and some of the congestion reduction and mobility, but also the environmental goals that have been a kind of focal point for the administration, I think, transitioning down through all of the agencies. We've also looked to ensure that we are achieving a modally balanced program we'll talk a little bit about more, where, as you can appreciate, we are a heavily urbanized and kind of somewhat built out area of the state, yet meeting the demands of a quarter of the population, and where we really need to be looking at how we strategically address those kind of demands. And those always can't be with just adding capacity to the highway system, but where we need to be looking at multimodal elements within these types of corridors. We're also trying to act as good partners, we'll talk about a little bit more, and adhere to our Metro Board's adopted value criteria framework, which I mentioned. With respect to the restoration of our prior project deletions, this is really focused on the 138 corridor. This is a project that has been in development in collaboration with Caltrans for a number of years. It's been a significant priority for the north part of Los Angeles County, as well as for the connectivity with San Bernardino County, which is just to the west here, or excuse me, to the east of the corridor as it transitions from Palmdale. In the 2016 STIP, we deleted the funding for segments 6 and 13, and with the funding opportunity that we had before us in the 2018 STIP, we're looking to bring those 2 segments back, as well as to complete the project. So segment 4, which is in the middle, was the last kind of outstanding need within this corridor, and we're taking this opportunity in collaboration with District 7 to be able to fully fund this project and deliver it to the constituents. We also talk about the advancement of state policies. I mentioned there are a number of these based upon kind of the aggregate kind of benefit cost analysis across all the projects. We're looking to realize about $26.5 million. and CO2 emissions are saved. We're looking at, as we talked about, Fix It First, $47 million invested there to kind of the state of good repair investments. With respect to the 138 project as well as the SR 71, we're looking at the $150 million investments towards improving safety and reducing congestion. And then, as mentioned before, $107 million that is being focused on high-capacity transit. And this is part of our, what we look at as our kind of Tier 1 in APD strategy. Again, on the modal balance is recognizing that in a community like Los Angeles County, we really need to be thinking about how we are, investing in transit in parallel to the necessary investments in the highway system. And with the proposal that we have before you, that includes about 51% of the funds going to transit across the two projects, the San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor, as well as our bus acquisitions. We've also talked about partnership, and this is one where we've sincerely appreciated the partnership at the state at all levels, from the district to headquarters to the commission, as we look at trying to implement, kind of strategic ways in which we can meet the complex needs within Los Angeles County, as well as, the challenges throughout the state of California as we've kind of moved through time. We have worked with District 7 to fulfill the funding requests in the RTIP that were not incorporated into the 2018 draft ITIP. We appreciated that there are a number of ITIP recommendations that came forward that for various purposes could not be fulfilled through the ITIP, so we have made sure that we pick those back up, in the RTIP funding to fully complete the funding plans for those projects. We've also aimed at trying to employ kind of a proportional programming, so breaking up some of our larger projects over multiple years. I know we're still in conversations with commission staff of what would be most appropriate, but we've done in the past where we've kind of broken up kind of the acquisition of vehicles for certain projects where our contracting allows for that. Similarly, on like our large transit corridors, where unlike our highway projects, we do have provisions that we can put in place with the contracting for those projects and be able to minimize any kind of one-year impact in the allocation of those funds, and really trying to ensure that there's opportunities for other regions throughout the state to realize funds appropriate to their projects. With respect to the adherence to the evaluative criteria framework, as mentioned, we've talked about the priorities that stem not only from our Measure M program, which is really the driving force for a lot of our areas of focus, but looking at our consistency with respect to regional plans, including the SCAG's most recent 2016 RTP and SCS, and where we are really carrying a lot of that weight, if you will, to be able to address a lot of the GHG emissions reductions within the SCAG region, and where, again, our projects are really providing that kind of foundation for the transformative change that's needed over this period of time. And then looking at, kind of a focus on the critical needs and state of good repair, and that's not only on the highway, system, but also on the transit side. This is just kind of a short overview of our Tier 1 programming. As I mentioned again, the bus acquisitions, the larger East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor, and looking at fully funding the SR 138 program, as well as addressing the gap closure on SR 71. And that gap closure includes HOV lanes we'll talk about. So the outputs that we're looking at here is being proposed would include 610 new vehicles for our bus system, 9.2 miles of high-capacity transit, 8 new HOV lane miles, 23 lane miles of safety improvements across both the 71 and the 138 corridor, and then up to 28 new and improved stations. And this is just recognizing that our board is going to be acting in a couple months here on the locally preferred alternative for the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor project. And so based upon that alternative, those stations will be finalized. Just a little spotlight on the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor. I think some of you are familiar with this project, as it's had a life historically in the TCRP program that has since been canceled, and with those funds transitioned over as part of SB1 to other programs, including the Transit City Real Capital Program, which we will also be applying for funds in SB1 for this project. But this is a significant corridor for us, provides an immense amount of connectivity kind of northeast between Metrolink, Low Sand stations, our own very highly successful Orange Line, which is, kind of one of the exemplary fixed guideway BRT systems, not only in the state of California, but also nationally. So a lot of value here in connecting some very dense kind of activity centers within Los Angeles County, and again, providing, really integral connectivity to other systems to promote that kind of interconnectivity as needed in our community. The other part is the APDE that we've talked about, and we really looked at this as an opportunity and one that we appreciate the state making available this cycle of the STIP. It's been a long time since this opportunity has been here, but kind of in the same mindset, I think that we recognize that we have a changing kind of landscape and paradigm as far as how we are going to be needing to position projects to be able to compete in the future SB1 cycles. That is really the intent here with kind of our APDE recommendations. These are ones that we have worked in depth with Caltrans District 7 to ensure that, again, we're using these monies, to be able to support high priority projects and be able to ensure that we've got projects positioned appropriately in a pipeline for future discretionary opportunities. And then finally, this is, I would qualify as more of kind of our aspirational, is given the opportunity to identify projects up to kind of a maximum target, where we will be looking at additional opportunities up to $110 million, both towards the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor and also on the I-405, which is a significant improvement in that area. And with that, I'd just like to thank you again. I'd also like to, again, recognize the ITIP proposal that's been brought forward by the department. Again, as we mentioned in the last kind of Southern California hearing for the ITIP, we sincerely appreciate the support of the state on a number of those projects, including the repurposing of the $7 million of intercity rail funds to the Rosecrans-Marquardt grade separation, which is without question a high priority for not only Los Angeles, but I think statewide, in the support for goods movement as well as passenger rail within that corridor. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions? No? Okay, I have some questions for you. So, first of all, Tier 3 aspirational, when you're asking over the amount, is a little bit hard when we're here, we're over programmed. So help me understand how we would do that.
Their maximum that they are proposing is if there is capacity available. What that means is that we have to have capacity in order for them to program up to their maximum. We can meet their total target. The way the current proposals came in, we may be able to provide additional, but the problem is independent from the prior conversation on the first 2 years of the STIP. That is where we overprogrammed in the first 2 years of the STIP.
Okay.
Those projects, we will need to delay $500 million of projects in the first 2 years of the STIP. And so that is really where the challenge is. LA's proposal is still within the overall target capacity of the entire 5-year STIP period.
And we've tried to be very mindful of the capacity within the first 2 years.
Okay, a couple other questions. In this, I don't see any projects that kind of relate to an airport connector or anything. So where are those projects? Because I know we talk about it all the time, but.
So there are a number of projects that we have lined up actually for the discretionary SB1 programs that include connectivity to both the Bob Hope Burbank Airport as well as the LAX Airport. So those projects are ones that we feel are most appropriate at this point in time to compete for discretionary SB1 funds relative to, as I said, where we've prioritized the formulaic funds going to what we see as kind of critical needs on safety, state of good repair, or augmenting some of the kind of standing funding plans for projects like the East San Fernando Valley Transit Corridor, which had historically planned state funding partnerships, that date back to the TCRP program.
Okay. And then question on the new bus, what kind of fuel source are we looking at on those new buses?
Well, as I think many of you can appreciate, we're still at a point in transition. So there are some of these where there could be a question of whether we're at a point in time when we will actually be purchasing all electric or CNG. Our board right now has moved forward with one of the first large purchases of electric vehicles on both the orange and the silver lines. However, as a part of that, we've also taken on a study to evaluate what's the most appropriate technology and trying to be somewhat technology neutral as we get to more of a focus on zero emissions. So there's still discussion as far as what exactly that technology is going to be. Well, I think there's a lot of focus on electric buses. So by the time we get here, it may be one of those situations where, some of the purchases might actually be zero emissions. But it's also recognizing that, we're having to be very mindful of how we're deploying those vehicles. And so some of these may actually, and I think we've gone ahead and kind of from a conservative standpoint, model the benefits as CNG replacements.
So this number represents CNG replacements?
That is correct.
Okay.
But I said we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because I said our board has only taken action to date on 2 procurements for the orange and the silver line that are full electric buses. However, they have initiated, or we are taking on a study to then address, kind of the best technology. But that being said as well, it's going to take us a while. We have one of the largest fleets, and it's going to be, kind of a progressive transformation, if you will.
Well, but so if this amount is approved, are we approving the amount or approving the number?
You're approving the amount, yes. And right now,
Okay.
The number of, excuse me, the number of buses there are 2 vehicle purchase projects proposed. It's 205 vehicles based on the estimated cost for these CNGs. And as he said, they would be able to, if they went, electric and they're costlier, they would be able to change that to a different number of vehicles.
And are these incremental or are these replacement? Well,
right now, these are replacement. But as I said, the intent is looking at how we would be converting the fleet over. And this is coming with a lot of emphasis as well from our friends at the Air Resources Board.
yeah, so I struggle with just a little bit of, how do we increase ridership, which, I'd love to have the conversation about all the chatter we hear about ridership. But how do we do that? And then what exactly are we approving? And is it, if we're migrating and you have existing fleet, do you buy a new, different fuel source versus the changes?
I think the important part here is this is a part of our very aggressive state of good repair program for our bus fleet. That is transporting an immense amount of ridership on a daily basis.
Okay.
And these replacement buses are needed to be able to ensure that we are delivering those services across, our system.
Yeah, and maybe what you're asking is whether replacement buses are eligible, which they are on the STIP, not just expansion purchases.
Okay, because I struggle with semantics a little bit, thinking IP means improvement plan, so to me that's improving our system. Just to boil it down to a real basic definition, whether it's an RTIP or a STIP, versus state of good repair seems a little bit more like repair and maintenance, so it's into the shop. So I don't know if I'm hung up on semantics or what, but I think when we're in a position of having to spend absolutely every dollar extremely wisely to deliver, and we always should be in that situation. In my opinion, we always need to be very, very wise with our investments to deliver mobility options. It's hard to really understand exactly, specifically what it is. And then finally, I just have one question. In terms of the I-5, I don't see any mention here of improvements. Where are we? I mean, we have some underway. It's been a while since we talked about those, but if I'm looking out 4 more years, when are we going to do?
So there's a couple key things here. Immediately on the horizon is the I-5 North, and that's going to be the HOV and truck lane corridor that goes north of the interchange of I-5 and the SR-14 in kind of northern part, and that continues, up a quarter, about 12 miles into Castaic. That is one, again, that we have positioned as a part of our discretionary SB1 goals. And then the widening of the I-5 between the 605 and the 710 is much more complex, as you can appreciate, coming off of where we are still in construction with I-5 South. So that is really where, as you see with the APDE, we have prioritized investment into, the I-5 605 interchange, which is really the critical kind of piece there that then addresses, how we're going to transition forward to the north. And that was for PNED. As a part of District 7's recommendations to Caltrans headquarters was actually in parallel to PNED for the I-5 main line from the 605 to the 710. And we have, continued to advocate on their behalf, for that parallel investment. However, at this point, I don't believe it is being recommended, by headquarters. Those are kind of our plans, on the I-5, all to complement what is going on right now as far as the construction underway in kind of the I-5 South, and then what we commonly call the I-5 North, which is in kind of like the general Burbank, San Fernando Valley area.
Any other questions? Nope. Okay, thanks.
So a lot of going on the I-5.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
The next one is Orange County. Pages 42 and 43 in your hearing book. Orange County is proposing to program above their total target by $7 million. They are proposing to program above their minimum in the first 2 years of the STIP by over $77 million. They are proposing 2 new projects and to delete 1. They will be seeking SB1 funding on 2 of their proposed projects, and they are proposing to program 2 new projects using APDE shares, one beginning in 22-23. Darrell?
Well, good morning, commissioners and staff. I think it's still this morning. You asked a question about the I-5. I will guarantee you I'll talk about the I-5 coming up. Before I talk about the State Transportation Improvement Program and OCTA's request, just wanted to thank you publicly yet again for your support and efforts under SB1. And we wouldn't be here today talking about a STIP if we didn't have the stabilization efforts that you went under as it relates to SB1 and the STIP. And I'm going to talk a little bit about highway programs and capital projects, but I wanted to also note that without SB1 passing last year, we would have asked our board of directors in May of 2017 to cut our bus service by 11%, 180,000 vehicle hours. So we don't take it lightly when we say SB1 saved the day for transit in Orange County. Those effects went into immediately, and we continue to see good ridership on the routes that we've been able to keep, maintain, and approve. So with that, it's most important to deliver capital projects for agencies like OCTA and LA Metro and everyone else you've heard from today, as well as the Department of Transportation, to have a stable understanding of your stable funding sources and what you can plan for. Because if you can't plan, you can't deliver. So in order to move forward today, we're thinking a number of things about the STIP, and we're particularly excited about the stability that is provided as we move forward. The other thing about delivering capital projects is the ability to deliver on schedule, on time, and on budget. And we pride ourselves at OCTA in being able to do that. We pride ourselves in being able to deliver an integrated plan that has transit, rail, as well as highways and streets and roads. So I provided you with 2 handouts today. One is a very simple overview of our STIP, and I would encourage you to look at it. I'm happy to answer questions about it, and I'll talk about some of those in a moment. But I also have another handout that chronicles 9 projects delivered over the last 5 years, 3 in the highway mode, 3 in the transit mode, and 3 in the grade separation mode, that shows that we can deliver on time and under budget. And my point there is if you make an investment in Orange County, we're going to uphold our end to do the best we can to ensure that those benefits get to the motoring public and the traveling public as soon as possible. In terms of our STIP development, we work closely with Caltrans and local agencies, and we put a lot of thought into the most efficient and best use of available resources while continuing to support the needs of the residents, the goals of the OCTA board, as well as what Mr. Ritter just referred to is the regional transportation plan, the sustainable community strategy, as well as the governor's executive orders to reduce greenhouse emissions and improve goods movement. So we look at all of those together under the umbrella of our local sales tax measure, under the umbrella of our needs and requirements as a public transit agency as well. Our 2018 board strategic initiatives highlights our commitment to delivering capital projects, maximizing funding opportunities across all sources, and championing fiscal responsibility. These align very closely with Caltrans' goals to provide stewardship and efficiency, as well as maintaining system performance. Our STIP proposal specifically includes 6 freeway projects. The first project in priority would be State Route 55 in Orange County. It's our central corridor in the county. It runs from Interstate 405 to the I-5, and some rumors would tell me that Commissioner Dunn has experience with this corridor. It is also something we are working very closely with in partnership with District 12. This is something that we have been working very hard on for the last number of years to do the best project we can in the corridor. As it relates to the STIP, we are seeking $80 million in STIP funding for the project. The project proposes to add a high occupancy vehicle lane. There is already one there today. This would be a second HOV lane. We would add a new general purpose lane and auxiliary lanes throughout the length of the corridor. Current traffic demand along the 55 corridor is already taxing the system, and our future demand models forecast unacceptable levels of congestion. These much needed improvements would help alleviate the congestion and provide significant air quality benefits associated with the additional HOV lane. To fully implement the HOV lane, OCTA is requesting consideration of funding not only from the STIP, but also from the Senate Bill 1 Congested Corridors Program. The HOV lane portion of the project is just one element along with other transit, active transportation, and arterial improvements being submitted under SB 1 Congested Corridors. The idea is a package of improvements to look at overall transportation improvements within that corridor. As one of the most congested corridors, not only in our county, but in California, we hope you'll agree that's an excellent candidate for funding under that program as well as consideration under the STIP. Moving on to the I-5, we have 3 projects on the I-5 that are proposed for funding. We're requesting construction phase funding for 2 segments of the I-5 improvement project, ranging starting at State Route 73 I-5 intersection in the southern part of our county up through El Toro Road, just south of us here. The other is for the design phase of the I-5 from the 405 to the 55. We're requesting a total of just over $149 million in STIP funding. It'll add a general purpose lane in each direction, as well as extending HOV lanes and adding auxiliary lanes where needed. The I-5, I don't need to probably inform you, but it's a vital artery, not only in Southern California, but in the entire state. And in Orange County, it serves local residents, commuters, goods movement, as well as business activity and tourism within our county. We're also seeking just over $13 million in STIP funding for the State Route 57 truck climbing lane. The 57 corridor currently is characterized by poor operational performance, particularly during peak hours, and a significant amount of that poor performance is associated with very high truck volumes. The truck climbing lane project will provide significant relief for both people and goods movement traveling northbound on the 57 corridor. As I mentioned a moment ago, our RTIP submittal is strongly rooted in the highway side of the transportation system, and we will be looking to other sources of funding under our umbrella of a multimodal transportation agency for other modes. Specifically, we'll be looking to the SB 1 competitive programs, which have been specifically designed to meet state goals for multimodal projects and transit projects under the STIP, to complement the STIP program of projects. We understand it takes a balanced plan and improvements in all modes and multiple funding options for OCTA, the region, and the state to meet the local and state goals, and we shouldn't consider those in isolation. In summary, our STIP proposal consists of $856 million in total, of which $261 million is proposed from the STIP, and with that, we would propose to leverage or match another $595 million in discretionary or fund sources available to OCTA. When that's done, we would expect these projects would equate to approximately 7,800 jobs over the 5-year time horizon. We would maximize mobility and accessibility for all people and goods in the region by saving over 28 million annual person hours. We would have quantifiable emission reductions by preventing over 104,000 tons of CO2 from being released into the atmosphere on an annual basis, and then significantly improve safety and reduce congestion-related accidents, and finally improve access to jobs, housing, and commerce. Finally, I'd like to note that we really very much appreciate Caltrans support and submittal of the interregional improvement project, the Laguna Niguel passing siding, which is part of our Los Angeles corridor here in southern Orange County. The ITIP proposes to provide $3 million to construct 1.8 miles of new passing siding railroad track and relocate existing tracks out of the way. And with that, we look forward to your approval of our RTIP submittal as submitted. We greatly appreciate the opportunities to speak today. And finally, in closing, I'm looking very forward to seeing at least 3 of you tomorrow at our Interstate 405 improvement project groundbreaking, which will be the largest project in Orange County's history and currently the largest highway construction project in the state of California. So thank you, Vice Chair Inman and Commissioners and staff.
Thanks, Darren. Questions? Commissioner Dunn?
Oh, no questions, but really thanks for both the successes and, I mean, the presentation itself. You guys are hyperactive overachievers, and I'm very proud to be in Orange County and working with OCTA. I also want to give a shout out to District 12 for their help on the 55. I think that project, you're right. I mean, that project has driven my life for 50 years. So thank you for taking a look at that one, and look forward to working this one through. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks. Darren, a little bit, a couple of questions. One, density, and I know Commissioner Dunn likes to remind me the density you all have here, but talk to us a little bit about the density in Orange County. I think it's amazing to me when I get reminded.
Vice Chairman, I'm happy to talk about that. I know it's hard to believe when you look out the window here that we're in the 3rd largest county in California by population and the 6th largest by population in the entire nation. But when you go a little further north and you get into the central part of our county, I'll use Santa Ana as an example. Santa Ana is the 5th densest city of over 100,000 people in the entire United States. You don't think of that because you don't see high rises, you see different types of development. That's one of the reasons that's driven us to make significant investments in our transit system in the central part of the county. We plan to break ground later this year in our first light rail transit project, and it will be connecting Santa Ana and Garden Grove to the Los Angeles corridor. But those, just because there's not large high rises there doesn't indicate by any means that the density is not there. In fact, the center of Santa Ana is denser than San Francisco in terms of residents per acre.
That's just phenomenal to me when we're reminded of that.
We're second in density to San Francisco.
Yeah,
it's shocking that people don't see that.
No, it's not easy to see. I mean, I think the way we all have done it. I live in Orange County. I'm native here, but it is phenomenal to me. Talk to me a little bit. Los Angeles corridor. We heard at the last hearing about equipment, how we were desperately. Any of that come under your partnership, or have we made any progress on that solution?
So if I could, Vice Chairman, a couple of comments on the Los Angeles corridor, maybe picking up where Darren Kettle left off about an hour and a half ago, that we were, as a managing agency of the Los Angeles corridor, under the 8-county structure between San Diego and San Luis Obispo, we worked hard earlier this month to bring additional rail cars and locomotives from the Bay Area and Northern California into Southern California. We appreciate the partnership of Caltrans, the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority, and the Secretary's office in making that happen. But it exposed a challenge or an issue that we have, which is the corridor is very successful. Total ridership between all services last year exceeded 8 million riders, and our biggest challenge right now is having enough seats at the right time of the day in the right direction. The state of California is underway with a procurement of additional rail vehicles. It's our understanding that although it has been delayed, we are getting closer to delivery of those, and some of those will be allocated to the Pacific Surfliner service in Southern California. OCTA individually has been very supportive of the Los Angeles corridor in the last 20 years. We've spent about $2 billion investing in track capacity, safety projects, grade separations, as well as parking structures along the Los Angeles corridor, because we do think within Orange County, particularly moving into Los Angeles County, it really is a huge relief valve to Interstate 5. Back to your question on Interstate 5, we believe if Los Angeles corridor and Metrolink wasn't there, we would need a lane in each direction on the I-5 just to have the same amount of traffic we have today if the rail system were to be removed. So what LA Metro talked about with the grade separation at Rosecrans, very supportive of that, very helpful overall. And we see it as a huge part of our movement of people in and out of our county in both directions each and every day.
Okay. A couple of other quick things. When I asked this of you, but it's primarily because you're the last guy standing right now, but
That's okay.
I meant to bring it up earlier, and it's the transportation network companies and the impact on all of us in terms of the work we all collectively do and they're here, they're a reality, they're changing how we all live and work and play. So how do you all stay ahead of that? I don't know if it's possible to be ahead of it, but we need to. I looked at your summary here in the test and station parking, and I'm thinking, how do we right-size parking if we don't know how many folks are really going to drive their car there versus using another alternative? So can you talk to us, and how can we be helpful in that discussion?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We're underway with our long-range transportation plan now, and 4 years ago we were at the same point in our long-range transportation plan, and we didn't even think 4 years ago that transportation network companies were a thing we should be concerned about. And I think in our industry, particularly those of us who have a transit responsibility as well, we went through 3 phases of understanding the transportation network companies. The first phase was to ignore them because we didn't understand what they were and we didn't know if they would have any impact. The second one was to fear them because we thought they were our competition in some way. And where we're at today, which I think is a much better place to be, is an understanding that they're a partner in delivering trips. And we get very concerned, I think, as transit providers, that we should provide all the trips. I actually think we should provide and broker trips. So we're providing the trips we need to provide through Metrolink, through traditional bus service, through express bus service, and we recognize that the TNCs have a role. And to that end, we have tried to work with the TNCs on a number of fronts in partnership where we can. We have a pilot program underway in the city of San Clemente now where we removed about 18 months ago a very unproductive, very unproductive bus route and replaced it with a Lyft partnership with Lyft in the city of San Clemente. We're learning a lot about that. We think it has a role in the future. Working between public entities and our auditing and funding requirements and private entities with their privacy expectations has been more difficult than planned, but we do think they have a role in that. And some of the opportunities to learn from them in terms of on-demand service and in real time has led us to pilot a program later this summer that we call microtransit. And we think that is the idea that people that don't need a big bus, but they can't quite afford or need personalized trip planning that a TNC would provide, we would provide something in the middle. So we have 2 pilot programs coming up, 4 to 5 mile square miles region, one in the Huntington Beach area and one just south of us in Aliso Viejo, to look at on-demand trips that sort of fit that middle. It is a pilot. We'll look at how we integrate that with our regular bus system, the arterial system, as well as the transportation network companies. Finally, in closing, I would say the idea that they're taking transit trips away, I think, is not true, at least in our region. We believe that most of what is taking transit trips away is cheaper access to automobiles, cheaper access to gasoline, and the idea of moving through that income strata and the desire to have a personal vehicle. We think TNCs are a small part of the overall shift in transit ridership. I hope that helps.
Great. Any other comments?
I would just share that we've asked for a little presentation on TNC's impact and for planning purposes, because we are seeing some interesting, I think even your office supplied me with some information that we are seeing an increase in traffic, not just because we're fully employed, but also because of the number of vehicles on the road. So we're looking to hopefully get our arms around that and how that would affect short-range planning.
I think on that, Commissioner Dunn and Commissioner Inman in particular, SCAG, in partnership with its transit operators, has looked to UCLA to do some analysis on transit ridership and TNCs. We are anxiously awaiting the public release of their report, which I think is scheduled for next week. It does have some discussion of impacts of TNCs, and I would encourage the commissioners and commission staff to look at that when it becomes available.
Mr. Kehoe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very interesting comments on the ride-sharing networks, and that you're working in partnership with them. That's a creative solution, and you say you're learning a lot. I bet you are. And consumers can choose that alternative already for the last mile or in the last couple of miles. In my case, this morning, I got off the train at the Irvine Amtrak station and lifted over to this address very easily and pretty economically. So I think we will see more and more of that, and I think it does support transit, getting to and from the big links through Lyft and other networks. Then I wanted to just ask you, where you're building new parking or expanding existing parking, do you have a set policy on providing electric car charging for electric vehicles?
So our current policy as it relates to rail transit stations in Orange County is that we provide grant funding to cities, and then the cities become the owner and operator. We encourage them to have parking management plans. We encourage them to provide other amenities, including electric vehicle charging, but we don't have any hard requirements on any of the aspects other than that the parking spaces have to be reserved and used for transit specifically. So our model is a little bit different than some of the other county commissions you would see, is that we're providing the grant and leaving that decision-making up to the local city who's the host. In exchange for that, they have full responsibility for operations and maintenance of the parking structure in the facility as well.
And have you been able to assess adoption under that plan, or do you leave that up to the cities?
We leave it up to the cities, but I can give you a quick overview.
That'd be great.
At Irvine, where you got off this morning, there are electric vehicle charging stations. They're in the front area as opposed to the structure. We recently, with the city of Anaheim, built the Anaheim Regional Transportation Intermodal Center. It opened in 2014. It has significant number of electric vehicle charging stations as well. And we do see that as part of a project that is coming forth at the city of Orange. The one thing I would note is that as charging technology changes and battery technology changes, the whole goal is to charge faster. As an electric vehicle owner myself, I'm looking for 30-minute charges and 60-minute charges versus what we had 5 years ago, which was 8-hour charges, 10-hour charges, and 12-hour charges. So one of the things we see, particularly at Anaheim, is we've had to the city of Anaheim's placed a 4-hour charging limit to cycle vehicles through,
right,
which is great, but it doesn't work for someone that boards the train in Anaheim and goes to LA for the day because they're not going to be back in 4 hours. So I think we have to think a little bit differently about the type of charging and the expectations of the vehicle owner at transit stations because of that shift from long charging to quick charging.
Very, very good comments. It is a very fluid situation.
Yes.
And I want to see more electric charging, but I don't know where, how much, or what level either. But we have to figure out how to do it. So I'm glad that you're moving forward with it and working with your cities, because that's the way we'll get the data we need.
Great.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Mitch?
Well, there was the rail car procurement that was just brought up, and I don't know if this is something that Norma or Bruce can speak to, or if not, maybe we can ask Malcolm to speak to it at the commission meeting. But my understanding was it's a multi-state procurement, and my understanding was there were significant challenges with the contractor in which it looked like they were failing. Caltrans stepped in, was able to bring in another contractor and keep the deal going, which had the potential to head pretty far south. I'm not sure if you guys have some of the details of that.
What project is this? Oh, the bus. Yeah.
But that would be something we'd have to come back to you on in the details, so we can be prepared for both this next STIP hearing and at the commission meeting if you'd rather have it addressed there.
Well, it might be good to have Malcolm just talk a little bit about about it at the next commission meeting, because it seems like a chance to really tout some of the good work you guys are doing.
Yeah. We'll address that in his remarks on Wednesday.
Great, that's good news, because one of my goals is not to have anybody have to do a standing room only ride if they've chosen to join us on a rail or a transit journey. I would hope that everybody could sit down if they chose to. So yeah, whatever we can do collectively to remove any of the barriers. And then Darren kind of mentioned SCAG, so I've seen our good friend Comey in his new position at SCAG. Did you want to add a little something, or you just came to visit with us today? Or it's good to see you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Inman and Commissioners. It's good to be here. It's really relaxing to observe the commission meetings these days. But seriously, I think the issue of TNC came up in the SCAG study that UCLA did on transit.
I think it's an important study. We're hoping to publicize the outcomes of the study. It's a very interesting find, and I think we all had the intuition that TNCs were still in ridership from transit. That was a basic intuitive approach that we had. But I think the study helps to answer that question very well. What we noticed with the TNCs, and I think you're right, it's something we have to, in planning, in transportation planning, we have to take serious note of, understanding that they're here and they'll continue to be part of the infrastructure of transportation, and how do we take advantage of that going into the future, and how do we anticipate what the next technology ride will be. What we've seen with the TNCs is mostly they are actually moving people out of single occupant vehicles, and people are giving up vehicles because of access to TNCs. So there's more of that, more so than transit ridership shifting to TNCs. If anything, I think OCTA actually has been one of the pioneers of using TNCs to complete rides as last mile, first mile. And in some cases, there's a transit property in Northern California that actually replaced a route with taxi cabs and TNCs. So we're seeing those dynamics happen, and so I think we have to just be attentive and present to take advantage of what opportunities we have with TNCs. But you'll soon see the transit study released shortly. And Hassan would have been here, but he was invited to the State of the State, so he couldn't be here. I think he had his priorities somehow.
Well, Kami, we're delighted that you're visiting with us today, and just so you won't think you're going to miss us too much, at least Commissioner Dunn and I both sit on your GLUE Council.
Yes,
so,
I look forward to seeing you there.
We'll torture you in every venue we possibly have.
Okay, do we have any public comment? Bruce?
Yes, thank you. It's not a public comment, it's clarifying the earlier question from Commissioner Kehoe regarding Interstate 8, and it's where it is in the interregional system. It is, the entirety of it is in the interregional road system, and the section in El Centro is actually included within the priority corridor connecting the border to the freight network.
Good.
But not the entirety of the Interstate 8 is not part of the priority network, just the section within the city of El Centro at this time.
Thank you. I'll be talking to Sandag on Monday, and I'll get a little more information, but that's helpful, Bruce. Thanks very much.
Okay, and I also received confirmation that the update to the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan is indeed planned to be conducted within the next 2 years.
All right, so Vince, I know you're back there. Come on down. We're committed. So obviously, what's going on and what can we plan on?
Thank you for having me. Good day. No, actually, there's been a lot of talk. You know, your guess is as good as mine. There's been a lot of interest. Malcolm was back at Transportation Research Board last week, and there's a lot of discussion amongst leadership there. I've heard a lot more talk about potential opportunities coming up, but I heard a lot of that talking at the beginning of this administration also, so I've got nothing to kind of give. I think the biggest thing you can do is keep continuing what you're doing, the information sharing that you're doing, and letting people know what your needs are, and that type of thing, and it kind of lets everybody know that you are, despite SB1, despite self-help counties, despite the federal dollars, you still have a lot more needs than you have funding for. And I think every opportunity that you've been doing to share is clearly a good way to go.
Also, we spend an awful lot of time, our partners, is the we here, on those infra grants, so, you know.
So the infra
really
grant process, and I'll talk a little bit about this next week. I think the commission meeting's next week. So their infra grant process, they're in the process of evaluating all of those right now. So what they're doing is they're putting together a group at Secretary's office, because all that's handled out of the office of the Secretary. So they'll have teams from each of the different agencies that'll be part of that team, and they're going through and evaluating that right now. That much I know they're doing right now. I haven't heard any information other than I know they're in the process of evaluating that. And I think if I get an opportunity now, I don't know what circle is going to be here. You talked earlier about the mudslides and Caltrans and the work they did, and I appreciated that people recognized that it wasn't just fire and rescue, which is incredible. It wasn't just law enforcement, which are incredible, but it's Caltrans and local maintenance forces. So it's not just Caltrans, but it's local maintenance forces who are people who clean culverts out, and they clean out ditches, and they do some repairs, and they do some guardrail repair, and they do a lot of work that isn't search and rescue. And you know, when they were talking that they were able to clear that in a week, there was a reason it took a week. And I've had the opportunity to sit on a couple calls, and it didn't take a week because they didn't have the equipment and they weren't ready to go. It took a week because it was a search and rescue for a week. So they were clearing from me to you and going, you know, they're poking and saying, is there anything there? And then when they get to there, then they go, okay, you can clean this now. And so it's such a unique situation that I don't think everybody realizes. That's not something you prepare for when you're putting in for a job on a maintenance crew. And I think I had an opportunity to listen in on some of the support network that went into that. I had sat on a call one time, and the first thing I heard out of Director of Maintenance at Caltrans headquarters is, what do you need to the staff? Do you need more people? We got other districts that are ready. What support do those people that are out there need? We've got support, and it wasn't just we need more people, time, beds, food. It was emotional support. It was that side of things, because that's search and rescue. That wasn't, I mean, so they weren't just cleaning, they were search and rescue also. So just a unique thing. I take that opportunity to share with a lot of people that's not something a lot of these people signed up for when they signed up to be on a maintenance crew. And it's not just Caltrans, it's local units too. But it was a unique situation, but it was very impressive to see that machine get it rolling into place.
Thank you. We share that appreciation for our partners across all of our various agencies. So thank you. Okay, with that, I think we're going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you to our team and to those of you that